Good evening from New York. The fact of the matter, according to Senate Democrat Kent Conrad, who ranks 35th out of 537 in the combined Senate-House rankings for most contributions from healthcare industries, is there are not the votes in the United States Senate for a public option. But in our fifth story in the countdown, the more salient voice might be that of the progressive Democratic lawmaker Anthony Weiner of New York, now saying that without a public option in the administration's health care proposal, President Obama could stand to lose the votes of 100 Democrats in the House. That would leave him perhaps 60 votes short of passage of any reform bill there. Pissing off Peter and Tom and Dick and Harry and Louise to assuage Paul, only Paul. The White House having hinted over the weekend that it might be willing to abandon the public option, including a hint from the president himself on Saturday.
The public option, whether we have it or we don't have it, is not the entirety of health care reform. This is just one sliver of it, one aspect of it. And by the way, it's both the right and the left that have become so fixated on this that they forget everything else.
Because everything else is window dressing, Mr. President. On Sunday, Kathleen Sebelius, the Secretary of Health and Human Services, asked to comment on the president's remarks, expanded on the hint.
He continues to be very supportive of some options for consumers. What we don't know is exactly what the Senate Finance Committee is likely to come up with. They've been more focused on a co-op, not-for-profit co-op as a competitor as opposed to a straight government-run program. And I think what's important is choice and competition. And I'm convinced at the end of the day the plan will have both of those. But that is not the essential element.
A co-op, a cooperative, government-influenced but not government-run healthcare component in the system, precisely the kind of system authored by the aforementioned Senator Conrad in North Dakota.
The fact of the matter is there are not the votes in the United States Senate for the public option. There never have been. So to continue to chase that rabbit, I think, is just a wasted effort.
Besides which, think of the wasted campaign contributions, Senator. Speaking of wasted effort, one reform-minded Democrat warning that by abandoning the public option, the White House could end up losing far more support than it stands to gain from anywhere else. Congressman Anthony Weiner of New York telling CNBC, quote, the president does seem like he's moving away from the public plan, and if he does, he's not going to pass a bill. Later, the congressman saying that the president could lose the support of 100 Democrats in the House if he does not hold firm on the public option. The White House seeming to want to put the toothpaste back into the tube, at least some of it, first by suggesting that Secretary Sebelius misspoke, then by saying in a statement that, quote, nothing has changed. The president has always said that what is essential that health insurance reform lower costs, ensure that there are affordable options for all Americans, and increase choice and competition in the health insurance market. He believes that the public option is the best way to achieve these goals. Today, the president addressing veterans, a segment of the population that already receives government-run health care, and superlative health care at that, the VA consistently outranking private systems in the quality of health care it provides patients, according to a recent study by the conservative RAND Corporation. In Phoenix, the president promising the vets that their excellent government-provided benefits will not change.
Since there's been so much misinformation out there about health insurance reform, let me say this. One thing that reform won't change is veterans' health care. No one is going to take away your benefits. That is the plain and simple truth. We're expanding access to your health care, not reducing it.
Now, as to everybody else, let's call on our own Howard Fineman, senior Washington correspondent for Newsweek magazine. Howard, good evening.
Hi, Keith.
The White House is claiming almost simultaneously that the public option is not essential and that nothing has changed. These would seem to be mutually exclusive. What's actually going on right now?
Well, not unless you think it was never essential. And my sense of it is, and it has been for a long time, even going back to the rhetoric in the campaign, that Barack Obama has been much more interested in the idea of universality and in making history that way than in the public option per se. But if it is a bargaining chip, I think he's playing it way too early. It's like sort of those poker tournaments on the Texas Hold'em poker tournaments, but he's turning over all his cards in advance. He's not helping his cause here. He's looking weak as he negotiates with people who don't really want to negotiate with him.
And perhaps, I don't want to lapse into poker terminology, but perhaps knocking over the hand of the people who he supposedly are on his side of the table and say, oh, look what they've got. Anthony Weiner's point, if you abandon the public option, you might lose 100 Democrats who would abandon the president in the House. And even if Weiner is exaggerating slightly, Jane Hampshire pointed out today, the end of last month, 57 Democrats in the House signed a letter that said simply they cannot vote for a bill without the minimum of a public option, and 57 Democratic votes going against this would be enough to kill the whole thing, too. What is the White House strategy here? I mean, you eliminate the public option and enough Democrats vote no to kill reform. If that happens that way, it's not the Republicans who killed reform, it's the president who killed reform.
Right. I think what's happening, based on talking to some Democratic leaders on the Hill today, Keith, is that the White House and the Democrats are going to tack back the other direction. What they're going to look for is a way to make a broad enough bill to the liking of liberal Democrats to have it pass in the Senate under that reconciliation special rule by 51 votes, and make it liberal enough to get enough House Democrats to go along even without the so-called public option. They'll try to dress it up in all kinds of other ways, co-ops, extension of Medicaid, toward universality, and try to declare victory and get enough House Democrats to go along. That's my sense of what's going to happen.
But there is now also a report that the House will delay its vote on the final health care reform bill until the end of next month in order to provide, the terminology was, a cooling off period from these raucous town meetings. I mean, who thinks that everybody wants this to cool off? I mean, Chuck Grassley boasted that he was able to con the White House into delaying it past the recess, which permitted this farce about death panels and watering the tree of liberty and this, quasi-insurrectionist garbage to foment. Why on earth would the Republicans want it to cool down? Who are the amateurs in this game thinking it's going to cool down if this goes till the end of September?
I think that's been a fundamental mistake of the White House all along, sad to say. That they thought that the Republicans would sit down and really negotiate. I don't think that's happening at all. I think the Republicans decided long ago that they were going to slow walk it and try to kill it and try to obstruct it with a smile. And, of course, now once they've left the Hill, there's no smile. Instead, they're guns at the town hall meeting. So I don't think that tenor is going to change at all. I don't think there'll be any cooling off period. I think the more that the president tries to give away in the name of trying to achieve bipartisanship, the more recalcitrant the Republicans will become because they smell blood at this point.
It was 3 years ago, Donald Rumsfeld said it in an entirely different context, and I find myself agreeing with him. Appease the wrong people, and you have to be intellectually or morally confused to do so. Howard Fineman of MSNBC and Newsweek, as always, great thanks for the information.
Thank you, Keith.